Roosevelt proved you could be president forever, and Truman proved anybody could be president, and Eisenhower proved we didn't need one, and Kennedy and Johnson proved it was better not to have one. Nixon killed the presidency, and Ford embalmed it, and Jimmy Carter buried it, and Ronald was proving there's life after death. And I think Bush, you'll have to say, is an incarnation, a reincarnation of something, I don't know, or someone. I don't think the students today are indifferent. I think in the 50s you did have real kind of political apathy. I think right now the situation on campus is about the same as that in the general population, one of sort of confusion and uncertainty of not either knowing what to do, or if you think you do, of not knowing how to do it, how to get it going. I think that I tell students and faculty that I think that they have much more responsibility to do something now than was true in the 60s, when it was easy to proceed. You know, when the action was there, you didn't have to be very scholarly about it or academic, but now you do, and that that's where the leadership should come from. To expect the politicians to take the lead is expecting too much, but the academics, it seems to me, ought to be demonstrating their true function as critics of societies and at least as intellectual leaders, and I don't think they're doing it. There was a whole buildup of pressures that were bound to break loose sometime in the 60s. Some of them could have been alleviated in the Eisenhower administration, and some things could have been done early in the Kennedy administration, but they were postponed until it all sort of came together. The civil rights fight, then you had the addition of the war in Vietnam, which put additional pressure on students, and I think a kind of a coming together of resistance to being exploited. It was the first sign, I think, was when women refused to wear long coats, when fashion said they had to do it, and the students picked it up, and it was the period of honest blue jeans before the designer guys got into it. A kind of general protest against arbitrary authority, whether it was on the campus or whether it was parental or whether it was the fashion people or whether it was the government saying you got to fight this war. I am more concerned about the loss of liberty to bureaucracies which seem to be respectable, and I suggest to liberals that this is where they ought to be looking instead of worrying about every court decision. And the three bureaucracies that I see as most threatening are the Internal Revenue Service, which has no respect for the Bill of Rights. I mean, you could put a sign over the IRS office and say, abandon the Bill of Rights, you who enter here. No privacy, no due process. You're guilty until you prove your own innocence. Almost every guarantee in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is violated in the proceedings of the IRS. And it isn't just the violations, but when you allow a major government agency to violate something like the Bill of Rights, it's infectious. It spreads from there to other agencies. They say, well, if the IRS can do it, so can we do it. Second agency is the Federal Election Commission, which has arbitrary power to interfere with the process by which the government is chosen. And it, too, violates due process and equal protection and freedom of assembly and privacy. And the third, potentially dangerous, is the Federal Communications Commission and the measure of power which it has potentially over news and education, entertainment, the whole media process of giving information and of influencing culture. That these, in my mind, are three agencies or departments of government which ought to be watched much more carefully than they are. We had a big move for censorship under the Eisenhower administration. It seems to come with kind of passive Republican administrations when people have nothing to do but kind of worry about defending themselves from everything. And at that time, the move was to ban the use of the mails for what they called obscene material. And the first list of obscene books included Lady Chatterley's Lover, which everybody had forgotten about. It was a great revival of it, and also Lysistrata, or the Trojan Women. And Summerfield was Postmaster General. When somebody told him that the Trojan Women was 2,000 years old, he said, well, if the pornography is that old, why, it's all right. You can send that through the mail. And eventually it sort of faded out. And I think that what you got going now will also fade. Give the politicians and the people something more serious to think about. These sort of side issues tend to dissipate. At least I hope they will. I sort of feel kind of sorry I'm out of politics. If you could say I'm going to be in it for 20 years. Like when I came in 48, We had civil rights. We had a whole program. I think that right now there's an opening for a significant program that would sort of take care of most of America's problems, but make us a real force in the world again, which we aren't now. We can't even respond to Central Europe because we're so broke, and we shouldn't be. We don't control our own money. We haven't controlled our own foreign policy. We don't control our own borders. So that how are we going to move affirmatively in other areas where there's disorder when we're really in a sort of chaos at home?